No, absolutely not. Get up before I call someone.
Her voice didn't just interrupt the cabin, it cut through it, sharp, irritated, controlled, but only barely. It carried farther than it should have. 7 passengers froze mid-motion. A fork slipped from someone's hand and struck a porcelain plate with a thin, ringing clatter that seemed to echo longer than it should have. A man in the front row paused with a glass halfway to his lips. A woman across the aisle turned her head slightly. Just enough to see, not enough to be seen watching. And in seat 2A, the man at the center of it all didn't move.
This is my seat,
The flight attendant said, her lips tightening as her eyes scanned him from head to toe.
You've taken the wrong ticket.
Her tone carried something beyond irritation, something colder, something practiced. The man looked up slowly, not startled, not defensive, just calm.
I paid for this seat,
He said, voice low, even measured. She let out a short laugh. Not the kind you give when something is funny. The kind you give when you've already decided you're right.
Yeah?
She said.
People like you don't sit in first class.
There it was, clear, unfiltered, ugly. The air changed. You could feel it. Even the hum of the aircraft system seemed quieter for a second. A businessman in 1A shifted uncomfortably, pretending to adjust his sleeve. A woman in 1C looked down at her glass. Though she hadn't taken a sip in over a minute, a couple seated together in row 3 stopped speaking entirely. Nobody said anything.
Ma'am,
The man said again, still calm.
if you check the boarding pass,
Don't argue with me.
She snapped, cutting him off before he could finish. Her voice dropped slightly, controlled now but still loud enough to carry.
You're already making people uncomfortable.
She gestured loosely around the cabin.
These passengers paid to be here.
The word "these" hung there, dividing the space, drawing a line. And you, she added quietly, leaning just slightly closer, don't belong in this section. Silence spread again, thicker this time, heavier. The man didn't react the way most people would. No raised voice, no frustration, no attempt to prove himself. Instead, he shifted slightly in his seat, adjusted his posture, and said, in the same calm tone, I'd just like the lunch menu, please. For half a second, she stared at him. Then, she laughed. It wasn't soft, it wasn't polite. It was loud enough that people turned fully now. Lunch? She repeated, shaking her head. You think you're getting a meal up here? A fork dropped again somewhere behind them. Someone cleared their throat. No one intervened. First-class meals are for first-class passengers, she continued. If you're hungry, there's a snack box in economy. You can go back there and buy one. She straightened slightly, then added under her breath, but still audible. That's more your level. The insult landed clean, direct, intentional. The man nodded once. Just once. Slow, controlled. Not agreement, not submission. Just acknowledgement. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. No sudden movement, no tension, just deliberate. Calm, because what nobody in that cabin realized, what nobody in that moment could even imagine, was that the man sitting quietly in seat 2A was not just another passenger. His name was Marcus Reed, 46 years old, charcoal gray suit, slightly wrinkled at the sleeves from travel. No tie, a clean white shirt, collar open at the top, thin silver wedding band. No luxury watch, no designer, shoes, no expensive luggage, just a plain black carry-on resting in the overhead bin. Leather portfolio tucked neatly. Beneath the seat in front of him, he looked like someone who blended and someone you wouldn't notice twice, and that was exactly why she had chosen him. Marcus leaned back slightly in his seat. Around him, first class continued its quiet. Rhythm, soft jazz hummed through the overhead. Speakers, the faint scent of coffee and warm bread drifted from the galley. Ice clinked gently in glasses. Low conversations resumed in careful whispers. Everything looked normal. Everything sounded normal, except it wasn't, because tension had settled into the space like something invisible, something waiting near the galley. The flight attendant stepped beside another crew member, a tall man, with a sharp jawline and a perfectly pressed uniform. His name tag read Evan Holt. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. He had seen enough. They exchanged a glance, quick knowing, the kind of glance built on shared assumptions. Then he leaned slightly toward her. Upgrade, he muttered. She smirked. Or something worse, she replied. They both laughed. It was quiet, but not quiet enough. The overhead air vent carried their voices forward, pushing the sound gently down the aisle, straight to seat 2A. Marcus heard every word, every tone, every meaning behind it. His face didn't change, not even slightly. Instead, he reached forward and pulled a small notebook from the seat pocket. Worn leather, edges softened. A habit, not a prop. He clicked his pen, paused briefly, then wrote, Boinem, boarding pass challenged. Only passenger targeted. He closed the notebook carefully, placed it flat on the tray table, aligned with the edge. Outside the window, the runway stretched into the distance. The engines grew louder. The aircraft began to move. Passengers adjusted their seats. Seatbelts clicked into place. Phones were switched to airplane mode. Normal, routine, normal flight. But Marcus Reed remained, still, watching, listening, remembering. Because this wasn't new to him, not the tone, not the assumptions. Not the quiet way people decided who belonged and who didn't, and more importantly, this wasn't over, not even close. As the plane accelerated down the runway, lifting smoothly into the morning sky, the city below shrinking into a blur of gray and glass, Marcus Reed sat quietly in seat, hands folded, expression calm. But beneath that calm, something was already in motion. Something precise. Something patient. And when it finally unfolded, no one in that cabin would forget it. The aircraft leveled out with a soft, steady hum. Seatbelt signs dimmed. A quiet chime echoed through the cabin. And just like that, everything looked normal again. Passengers relaxed back into their seats. A businessman reopened his laptop. The woman in 1C lifted her glass again, taking a slow sip. The couple in row 3 resumed their quiet conversation, though their voices stayed lower now. Careful. Measured. But the air hadn't reset. Not really. Something lingered. Something unresolved. Marcus Reed sat still in seat 2A, gaze drifting toward the window. Clouds stretched endlessly beneath the wing, soft, white, peaceful. A sharp contrast to what sat inside the cabin. He reached forward calmly and slid his notebook slightly closer. Didn't open it yet. Just kept it there. Ready. From the galley, the faint clink of glass began to rise. Metal against glass. Ice shifting. Bottles being lifted. Service was starting. A moment later, Lydia Grant emerged, pushing the beverage cart. And just like before, she had changed. Her posture straightened, her expression softened. A polished smile appeared, perfectly rehearsed. Professional, warm, almost charming. "Good morning, ma'am," she said as she stopped at row 1. "Champagne or orange juice?" Her tone was smooth now, friendly, completely different from minutes earlier. "Champagne, please," the woman replied. "Of course." Lydia poured it carefully, steady hand, practiced movement. No tension, no hesitation, she moved seat by seat. Row 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. Each passenger received the same treatment, eye contact, a smile, a choice, a drink. "Orange juice, sir." "Certainly." "Would you like warm nuts as well?" Soft laughter, polite conversation, everything exactly as it should be. Then she reached row 2. The cart stopped beside the woman in 2B. A silver laptop rested open in front of her, screen glowing faintly. "Good morning," Lydia said warmly. "Champagne or orange juice?" "Orange juice, please." Of course. She poured it. Carefully. Perfectly. Placed it on the tray table. Offered a small bowl of warm nuts. Smiled. And then, she moved. Straight past Marcus. No glance, no pause, no acknowledgement. The cart rolled forward, the sound of its wheels soft but unmistakable. Marcus didn't move immediately. He let a second pass, then 2, then calmly. "Excuse me," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Lydia didn't turn. "Could I have some orange juice, please?" he added. A pause. Barely a second. "We're out," she said flatly, still without turning. The woman in 2B blinked, looked down at her glass, then back toward Lydia, then slowly toward Marcus. Her expression shifted. Confusion, then disbelief. Because her glass was full, freshly poured, condensation still forming along the sides. Marcus's eyes followed the cart as it continued down the aisle. Row 3. Row 4. Every passenger was offered a drink. Every passenger was served. Laughter returned. Conversation resumed, as if nothing had happened. Marcus leaned back slightly, turned his head just enough to look toward the galley. The curtain was partially open, not fully drawn, and through that narrow gap, he could see inside. 2 full bottles of champagne, a clear jug of orange juice, stacked glasses, untouched. He held the view for a moment, then looked forward again. No reaction, no visible change. He reached for his notebook, opened it, clicked his pen, and wrote, 31 a.m., beverage service skipped. Told we're out. Not true. He closed it again. Set it back in place. The woman beside him leaned slightly closer now, careful not to be obvious. "Sir," she whispered, her voice low. "Are you all right?" Marcus turned his head slightly toward her, gave a small nod. "I'm fine," he said, but his tone didn't quite match the words. She hesitated, then glanced toward the galley, then back at him. "They served everyone else," she murmured. Marcus didn't respond. Instead, his gaze drifted forward again, calm still but inside. He was no longer just observing. He was documenting a pattern, because 1 incident could be dismissed. 2 could be explained away. But this was becoming something else, something deliberate. Time passed slowly after that. 10 minutes, maybe 15. The cabin settled again into its rhythm. Drinks sipped, ice melted. Soft conversations filled the space. But the tension around row 2A didn't disappear. It just quieted, like something waiting. From the galley, voices drifted again, muted but not enough. "She actually asked for a drink," Lydia's voice said, low but sharp. A quiet laugh followed. "Evans." "What did you say?" he asked. "Told him we're out," she replied. Another laugh. "Good," Evans said. Set the tone early. Marcus didn't move, didn't turn, but he heard it. Every word. The woman in 2B heard it too. Her fingers tightened slightly around her glass. She glanced at Marcus again. Longer this time. Studying him, trying to understand why he wasn't reacting. Why he wasn't pushing back. Marcus remained still. Eyes forward. Expression unreadable. Because he wasn't finished watching. Not yet. A few minutes later, Lydia reappeared, this time without the cart, clipboard in hand. Her eyes went straight to seat 2A. Again, she stopped beside him. "Sir," she said. Marcus looked up slowly. "I need to verify your boarding pass again." A small shift moved through the cabin, subtle but noticeable. The man in 1A looked over, frowning slightly. The woman in 2B straightened in her seat. Marcus held her gaze for a second, then asked calmly, "You've already verified it. I need to check it again." No explanation, no apology, just control. Marcus reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone again, unlocked it, turned the screen toward her. She didn't just look this time. She took it fully from his hand, and turned away, walking back toward the galley with it. A quiet ripple passed through the cabin. "That's not right," someone whispered softly behind them. The woman in 2B stared, her expression tightening. Marcus remained seated, hands now resting lightly on the armrests. Calm, still, watching the seconds pass. 1 minute, 2, 3. The hum of the engines filled the silence. In the galley, Lydia stood with his phone, scrolling. Tapping, pretending, Evan leaned against the counter beside her, smirking. Neither of them seemed in any hurry to return it. 6 minutes passed. 6 full minutes. Marcus didn't move, didn't call out, didn't stand. He simply waited. Because now, this wasn't about inconvenience. This was about something else entirely, and whatever it was getting worse. 6 minutes passed, then 7, then nearly 8. Marcus Reed still didn't move. He didn't look toward the galley, didn't call out, didn't raise his hand. He simply sat in seat 2A, watching the cabin as if he were memorizing it. The woman in 2B glanced at him again, more uneasy now. Her drink sat untouched, ice slowly melting. "This is not normal," she whispered under her breath. Marcus didn't respond. Not yet. In the galley, laughter continued. Low, relaxed, careless. Lydia stood near the counter holding Marcus's phone, scrolling through it like it belonged to her. Evan leaned beside her. "Still there?" he asked. She smirked. "Yeah, just letting him sit." Another laugh. "People like that fold fast," Evan said. "Not worth rushing." Marcus heard every word, not because he was trying to, because they weren't trying to hide it. And still, he didn't react. Finally, Lydia returned. No phone, no smile, just clipboard in hand. Her steps were slower now, more deliberate. She stopped at seat 2A, looked down at him, not speaking immediately, just holding silence. Then, "Sir," she said flatly, "we have a seating issue." Marcus looked up calmly. "You already verified my boarding pass twice. I need to verify it again." A pause. This time, a few passengers openly looked over. Something about the repetition felt wrong. Targeted. Marcus studied her for a moment, then asked quietly, "Is there a problem with my seat? Or with me?" A flicker, just a flicker, but it passed across her face, quickly replaced with irritation. "There's a discrepancy," she said. "Stand up, please." Marcus didn't move immediately. He just looked at her. Long enough that the silence felt heavier than her voice. Then he stood, calmly, without hesitation. Behind her, Evan straightened slightly, as if expecting resistance, but there was none. Marcus handed over his phone again, this time without comment. Lydia took it, and instead of checking it briefly, she turned and walked away. Again, straight to the galley. This time, she didn't even pretend, she just held on to it, talking with Evan, laughing softly, pointing at something on the screen. The woman in 2B leaned forward. Again, "This is ridiculous," she whispered. "I know," Marcus replied softly. But his tone wasn't emotional, it wasn't frustrated, it was measured, like he was noting data. 10 minutes. Passed 10 full minutes. His phone still not returned. The cabin shifted. Slightly now, more passengers were noticing. Man in 1A frowned openly. The couple in row 3 stopped talking completely. Still, no one spoke up. Marcus remained standing, hands relaxed at his sides, waiting. Finally, Lydia returned. She placed the phone back on his tray table. Not gently, not respectfully, just dropped it there. "There," she said. "It checks out for now," then added under her breath, "For now." Marcus sat down again, picked up the phone, looked at it for a second, then set it down. He didn't argue, didn't question, didn't react. Instead, he opened his notebook again, clicked his pen, and wrote, 8 a.m. Phone taken for 6 minutes. Boarding pass re-verified multiple times. No explanation given. He closed it, set it aside. The woman in 2B was now fully turned toward him. "Sir," she whispered, "they're targeting you." Marcus looked at her briefly, then nodded once. "I know," that was all he said. A few minutes later, the service card appeared again, this time pushed by Evan menus stacked neatly in his arms. Leather-bound premium. Presentation? He smiled as he walked down the Aisle polished, professional. Fake warmth. Good afternoon, he said to row 1. Our chef today features herb-crusted lamb or pan-seared salmon. Passengers smiled back. Took menus. He continued forward. Row. Row. When he reached row 2, he paused. Looked at the woman in 2B. Menu. Ma'am, she nodded. Took it. Then he looked at Marcus. Didn't hand anything, just stared for a second. Marcus finally spoke. May I have a menu? Evan smiled slightly. Didn't stop walking. Rebecca will handle you, he said, and continued down the aisle. A few passengers frowned. That didn't sound like procedure. Marcus didn't respond. He just leaned back slightly, fingers resting, together, waiting. 2 minutes later, Lydia returned. No menu in her hand, no courtesy, just presence. She stopped beside him, looked down and said, Sir, first-class meals are for actual first-class passengers. Silence. Dropped instantly, not gradual. Instant, even. The hum of the cabin felt muted. The woman in 2B froze. A man in 1A turned fully. Now, Lydia continued, if you want something, there's a snack box in economy. You can purchase that for $12. A pause. Then she added, why don't you go back where you belong? The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They landed directly. Marcus didn't move for a moment, just looked at her long, still unblinking, then, quietly, I'd like the lamb. Lydia didn't hesitate. We're out. Then salmon. We're out of that too. Marcus turned his head, slightly, looked toward the galley. Through the half-open curtain, 2 untouched trays sat, visible. Lamb, salmon. Both. There. He said nothing about it. Instead, he reached slowly into his pocket, pulled out his phone, placed it face down on the tray table, pressed record. A tiny red light appeared. Lydia didn't notice. She was already walking away, smiling, faintly, like she had won something. Evan met her in the galley, high-fived her. Handled? He asked. Handled, she replied. Marcus sat, still, watching, recording, waiting, and for the first time that flight, something in the cabin began to shift, not loudly, not visibly, but inevitably. The cabin felt different now, not loud, not chaotic, but tense in a way people couldn't quite explain, like something was building under the surface. Marcus Reed still sat in seat 2A, phone, face down, red light still recording, unnoticed. The drink cart had passed earlier. Now the cabin had shifted into meal service, but in first class, nothing had reached him again. Passengers had started noticing patterns, subtle at first, then undeniable. The woman in 2B leaned slightly toward Marcus. Sir, they haven't served you anything. Marcus didn't turn his head, I noticed. A pause, then she whispered. This isn't normal airline behavior, Marcus replied quietly. I agree. No emotion, no anger, just confirmation, like he was documenting weather. At the front, Rebecca stood near the galley door, arms crossed, talking to Evan and another attendant. Nina, their laughter was softer now, but still there. He's still sitting there, Nina said. Like he owns the seat. Evan replied. Rebecca scoffed. He doesn't. People like that try this all the time. Upgrade scammers, Evan added. Mileage chasers. Rebecca nodded. Exactly, none of them looked at Marcus while saying it. But they didn't need to. They knew he could hear, and he did, every word. Still, he didn't react. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. The cabin speaker crackled. Captain's voice came, through smooth, detached routine. Ladies and gentlemen, we're cruising at 31,000 feet. Smooth skies ahead. Normal flight announcements, normal. Tone, completely disconnected from what was happening in the cabin. Rebecca stepped out again, this time holding a clipboard. Tighter, her expression had changed. Less casual now, more focused. She walked directly to seat 2. I stopped, looked down at Marcus. Sir, she said, I need your boarding pass again. Marcus slowly looked up. You already verified it twice. I need to verify it again. Passengers nearby were now openly watching. No one pretended not to. Marcus didn't argue. He simply pulled out his phone, opened the app, showed it. Rebecca took it, stared at it longer than necessary, then turned away without a word. But she didn't return immediately. Instead, She walked straight into the galley and closed the curtain behind her. Marcus watched her go, then calmly wrote in his notebook. 10:24 a.m. Boarding pass taken again. No explanation. Crew behavior escalating. The woman in 2B spoke again. Sir, they're singling you out. Marcus nodded slightly. Yes. Her voice dropped lower. Should you report this? Marcus finally looked at her, a calm, steady gaze. I already am. She didn't understand that. Not fully. But she believed him anyway. In the galley, voices rose, not shouting, but sharper now. He's still here, Rebecca said. Evan replied. So what do we do? Nina hesitated. He hasn't done anything wrong. Rebecca cut her off. He doesn't belong here. A silence. Then Evan said, We should escalate it then. Rebecca nodded. Yes, that word changed. Everything escalate, because now it wasn't about service. It wasn't about misunderstanding. It was about removal. Rebecca picked up the internal phone, dialed cockpit. Captain. Ashford, she said, voice steady. We have a situation in first class. Marcus heard nothing of it yet, but the cabin felt it shift again. The captain's voice came through seconds later. What kind of situation? Rebecca paused just long enough to frame it. Then, a passenger in 2A is becoming disruptive and refusing compliance checks. That was a lie, not partial, not misinterpreted. A clean fabrication. Marcus had not raised his voice once, had not refused anything, had not moved aggressively, but the captain didn't ask that. Is he cooperating now? The captain asked. Rebecca glanced toward Marcus. No. Another lie. Document it, the captain said flatly. We're busy up here. Handle it on your end. The line disconnected. Rebecca exhaled slightly, like permission had been granted. She walked back into the cabin. Evan and Nina followed behind her. This time, Brian, another crew member, joined them. He wore blue gloves, unnecessary but intentional. They stopped at row 2. Rebecca spoke first. Sir, we've received a security concern about your carry-on bag. Marcus looked up. From who? Confidential passenger report. A pause. The woman in 2B froze. No one reported anything, she whispered. Marcus heard her. Rebecca ignored it. Stand up, please. Evan said. Marcus didn't move. Immediately he looked at each of them, one by one, then stood calm, no resistance. Brian pulled the carry-on down from the overhead bin, hearted. Hit the floor with a dull thud. A few passengers flinched. He unzipped it. Not carefully. Not respectfully. Shirts were pulled out, shoes tossed aside, toiletry. Kit dumped onto the seat. Marcus watched. Silent. Brian picked up a framed photo of a young girl, holding a cello. He tilted it, smirked. Nice, he said. Yours? Marcus replied quietly. Yes, Brian placed it, face down on the seat. Then he pulled out a leather portfolio, paused. Saw the embossed logo, didn't recognize it. Probably fake, he muttered. Rebecca laughed. Gift. Shop prop. They didn't open it, didn't check inside, just tossed it back in the bag. Inside that portfolio sat credentials that could have ended everything immediately, but no one looked. The woman in 2B was now openly filming. Hands shaking slightly. Brian shoved the bag back toward her. Marcus, you can repack it yourself. Marcus took it slowly, carefully. He began reorganizing everything exactly as it was, precise, controlled, not a single movement rushed. Then he sat back down. Rebecca leaned closer, voice low, cold. You know, she said, I can always tell when someone doesn't belong in first class. A pause. It's a smell. A presence. She leaned in further. If you try anything, I'll have you removed at landing and blacklisted. Marcus finally looked up at her. Directly. Calmly. I understand. Rebecca smiled. Mistook it for submission. She turned away. Back in the galley, laughter returned briefly, but it felt forced now, less confident, because something was off. They just didn't know what. Yet, and Marcus Reed still hadn't raised his voice, still hadn't revealed anything, still hadn't stopped recording. The red light on his phone kept blinking quietly under the tray table, capturing everything, every Word every decision, every mistake, and the plane kept flying toward Seattle, closer and closer, to consequences they couldn't see coming. The cabin had settled into a strange rhythm now. Not calm, not normal, just controlled tension, like a wire stretched too tight, waiting for the moment it snaps. Marcus Reed still sat in seat, 2A, same posture, same calm face. Phone still recording. Beneath the tray table, red light steady. No one had served him anything. Not food, not drinks, not even an apology disguised as service. The woman in 2B hadn't looked away from him in a long time now, she whispered quietly. They're really doing this on purpose, Marcus replied without turning. Yes, a pause, then she added, why aren't you reacting? Marcus finally looked at her, a calm, unreadable expression. Because reacting changes nothing. That answer unsettled her more than the treatment itself. In the galley, the crew's tone had shifted again, less joking now, more performative confidence, like they were convincing themselves. Rebecca stood near the cart, arms folded. Evan beside her, Nina listening, Brian adjusting his gloves again. He's still just sitting there, Evan said. Rebecca scoffed, waiting for sympathy that isn't coming. Nina hesitated. Should we at least offer him something? Rebecca snapped her head toward her. No, a beat. Then softer. People like that push boundaries. If you give an inch, they take the cabin. Brian smirked. I say we just keep it simple. He doesn't get service. End of story. And just like that, it became policy in their minds. No announcement, no discussion, just silent agreement. Back in the cabin, service cart rolled out. Again, this time for beverages. Diane Mallory pushed it, smiling, professionally, but her eyes didn't meet anyone's. Champagne or orange juice, ma'am? She asked. Row 1, polite routine. She moved down the aisle. Every passenger was served row by row, glass by glass, until she reached row 2. She didn't stop at 2B first this time. She bypassed Marcus entirely. Again, the woman in 2B frowned. Excuse me? Diane smiled. Oh, just a moment. Then she leaned slightly toward Marcus's side, picked up a glass of water, paused, looked at him for a split second. Then her elbow shifted. It wasn't accidental. In the way accidents normally are, it was too controlled, too clean, too deliberate in its timing. The glass tipped. Cold water spilled directly onto Marcus's, soaking his trousers, cascading onto the seat, dripping onto the floor. A few passengers gasped. Oh no, Diane said instantly, but there was no panic in her voice, only performance. How clumsy of me. She didn't move to help, didn't reach for napkins, didn't apologize further. Just stood there, watching. Rebecca appeared almost immediately from the galley, as if she had been waiting. She looked at Marcus, then at the wet seat, then at the passengers watching, and smiled. Faintly, not concern, not apology, approval. Brian arrived with a towel, didn't hand it over. Threw it onto Marcus's chest. Clean yourself up, he said, then added, rear lavatory is available. First class restroom is reserved. The words hung in the air, heavy, humiliating, intentional. The woman in 2B had gone still. Her phone was already recording openly now. No hiding, no subtlety. This is insane, she whispered. Marcus slowly looked down at the soaked fabric, then up at them. No anger, no raised voice, just observation. He took the towel, placed it neatly on his lap, did not move toward the lavatory, did not respond. Instead, he opened his notebook and wrote, 2M, physical spill of water. No assistance offered. Verbal humiliation by crew recorded, then closed it. Rebecca leaned slightly closer. You know, she said quietly, some passengers think first class means privilege. A pause, but it still has standards. Marcus replied calmly, I agree. That confused her for a fraction of a second, but she ignored it. Evan rolled the cart forward again. Let's continue service, he said, like nothing had happened. The cabin, however, had changed. No one was pretending anymore. Passengers were watching, openly, uncomfortably, quietly outraged. The tech investor in 1A leaned forward. This is harassment, he said under his breath. No one responded, not even his own companion. Marcus stayed seated, damp suit, straight posture. Still, recording. Minutes passed, then Rebecca returned. Again, but this time she wasn't alone. Evan, Brian, and Nina all together. Their presence filled the aisle, blocking space, creating pressure. Rebecca spoke first. Sir, we've received a report of disruptive behavior. Marcus looked up. From who? She smiled. A concerned passenger. The woman in 2B snapped immediately. That's a lie. I'm literally recording all of this. Rebecca didn't even look at her. Sir, Evan said, you need to cooperate with crew. Instructions. Marcus stood again. Calmly. Without resistance, Brian stepped closer, eyes narrowed. He seems intoxicated, he said suddenly. A new accusation, completely fabricated. The cabin reacted. Instantly, gasps, whispers, confusion. Marcus looked at him, slowly. Steady. I haven't had any alcohol. Brian shrugged. Doesn't matter what you say. Rebecca leaned toward the intercom panel, her hand hovering near it. Ready. I'll inform the captain, she said. Marcus finally spoke, louder than before, not shouting, just, clear, do that. A pause, something shifted, just slightly. Rebecca stared at him for the first time. Uncertainty flickered, but she covered it quickly and walked toward the galley. The others followed. Marcus remained standing in the aisle-soaked suit, calm eyes, phone still. Recording. The woman in 2B whispered, Sir, they're trying to frame you. Marcus nodded slightly. Yes, then added, and they're documenting it themselves. He sat back, down, straightened his jacket, looked out the window, clouds drifting below, and waited, because now it wasn't just service anymore. It was escalation, and escalation always leads somewhere. The cabin had stopped feeling like a cabin. It felt like a stage where everyone finally realized the script had gone wrong, but nobody knew how to exit. Marcus Reed sat in seat 2A, wetsuit now partially dried but still visibly marked, phone still recording. Red light steady, unblinking. No one had served him since the spill. No one even pretended to anymore. The woman in 2B hadn't looked away in minutes. Her phone was still up, still capturing. They're escalating it, she whispered. Marcus replied quietly. Yes, but his voice wasn't tense. It was anticipatory, like he had been waiting for this exact turn. In the galley, the atmosphere had changed completely. No laughter now, no casual confidence, just urgency. Rebecca stood over the internal phone, her hand trembling slightly now, but her voice still controlled. Captain Ashford, she said, we have a passenger in 2A who is becoming increasingly non-compliant and verbally aggressive. That was the third version of the story. Each time it got worse. Each time more precise, each time more false. The captain's voice came through immediately. What's the situation now? Rebecca looked back into the cabin, saw Marcus sitting there, calm, still, unmoving. She chose her words carefully. He is refusing crew instructions and appears to be recording staff in a threatening manner. That wasn't true either, but it sounded official. There was a pause on the line. Then the captain said, do what you need to ensure cabin safety. I'm focused on landing. No questions, no verification, no curiosity, just dismissal. And that moment, that single moment, sealed everything. Rebecca exhaled, not relief, control. She turned to Evan and Brian. Okay, she said. We proceed. They nodded. Brian pulled out blue gloves again, this time slower, intentional, like theater. The three of them walked into the cabin together. Nina behind them, passengers immediately noticed. Silence spread. Even the hum of the aircraft felt louder now. They stopped at row 2. Rebecca spoke first. Sir, we are now conducting a security inspection of your personal items. Marcus looked up. On what basis? Evan answered quickly. Federal protocol due to passenger report. The woman in 2B immediately interrupted. I never reported anything. I am literally recording you saying that. Brian turned toward her. Ma'am, you may be removed for interfering. She didn't back down. I'd love to see you try. That shifted the tension again. Rebecca ignored her, focused on Marcus. Stand up, please." He did. No hesitation. Brian yanked the carry-on from the overhead bin again, harder this time. Angrier. It hit the floor with a louder thud than before. This time passengers didn't flinch. They stared. He opened it, repeated the same ritual. Clothes, shoes, toiletry kit. Then the photo, the same one. A young girl holding a cello. Brian paused. Looked at it again. Less smirk now. More irritation. "Still got this?" he muttered. Marcus said quietly. "Yes." Brian tossed it back in the bag. Then came the leather portfolio again. Rebecca picked it up, ran her finger over the embossed logo. Still unimpressed. "Probably some fake executive thing," she said, then added, "People love pretending." She didn't open it. Again, inside, sat credentials that could end everything instantly, but ignorance held the upper hand, for now. They shoved the bag back. Hard Brian leaned in. "You're done," he said under his breath. "Just sit quietly and we land." Marcus looked at him, calm, measured. "I've been quiet the entire flight." That answer didn't register. Not to them. Rebecca stepped closer, voice lowered. "This ends when we say it ends," Marcus replied softly. "No. One word. Simple. Final." A pause. Something shifted in the air. Rebecca stared at him. For the first time, uncertainty wasn't flickering anymore. It was growing. Then she turned sharply and walked back to the galley. Evan followed. Brian hesitated, then followed too. Marcus remained standing, and for the first time, he picked up his phone, held it above the tray table, and pressed a single button. The voice memo stopped. Immediately after, he opened another app. Corporate Secure Portal typed one message. Short, precise. Initiate live review. Full executive escalation. Now. Sent back in the galley. Rebecca was still speaking. "This guy is going to cause problems on landing. We should prepare restraint protocol." Evan nodded. "Agreed." Brian added, "He's been non-compliant since boarding." Nina hesitated. "Are you sure? There's video?" Rebecca cut her off. "Everyone records everything. It doesn't matter." That was the moment she made her final mistake. Because it did matter. Far above them, Marcus's message had already reached the executive layer, already triggered alerts, already bypassed normal channels. At Atlas Meridian Aviation Group headquarters, a secure boardroom screen lit up. Harold Vance's name appeared. Then legal. Then HRA notification flashed. Live incident, Flight 602, CEO on board. The room went silent. Harold leaned forward. Put him on. Back on the plane. Marcus sat down again, calmly. Closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. The cabin felt different now. Not because anything visible had changed, but because something irreversible had started. Rebecca returned to the aisle one final time. She stopped in front of him and said, "Sir, upon landing, you will be detained for questioning." Marcus looked at her, and for the first time, he smiled slightly. Not mockery, not anger. Just clarity. "Will I?" he said quietly. Then he turned his phone toward her. The screen lit up. A video call. 7 faces. Executive grid. Harold Vance at the center. Rebecca froze. Harold spoke first, his voice calm, but absolute. "Miss Hollis." A pause. "Do you know who you've been speaking to for the past 3 hours?" Silence. Marcus leaned back slightly in his seat, and finally said it clearly. "My name is Marcus Reed." A pause. "CEO of Atlas Meridian Aviation Group." The words didn't land immediately. They took a second, then another. Then everything in Rebecca's face collapsed. Color drained. Breath stopped. Hands trembled. Brian stepped back. Evan froze. Nina dropped her clipboard. Harold's voice came again. Cold final. "You've terminated yourself before landing," Rebecca whispered. "No, I didn't know," Marcus interrupted softly. That was the problem. The cabin was completely silent now. Every passenger watching, every phone recording, every breath held. The aircraft began its descent. Seatbelt sign chimed. And as the city of Seattle came into view, Marcus closed his laptop, calmly, like nothing had ever happened. But behind him, everything had changed.